opposite side of his wife, and the wife's looking at him like, I bet he's thinking about other girls. And in my head, I'm like, God, I don't have enough Chase Claypool in my dynasty rosters. I need to figure out what area of players I can get Claypool for. Like, that's my mind. Like, I'll sit there watching a movie, and there'll be something that happens in the movie. I'm like, and it'll correlate to a player's name. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, okay. Maybe if I trade him and give him this, maybe I could take that player and then make a bigger trade. Like, it's just like, if I go into like my Capitals Pigs leagues where you can actually have a bankroll and you can, you that carries over. Like, I had Drew Lock and I had Justin Herbert in a league. And I traded for Justin Herbert like a week before, and I traded $500 for Herbert. And then somebody comes up to me and like, I'll give you $1,100 for Lock and Herbert. So then I go in the rookie auction and I buy Herbert for $425. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, okay, I saved this much. And like, my mind is just filling up with all this. Like, okay, I got that much saved. I actually trade for Drew Lock again for cheaper. Like, just, yeah, my life is a joke.
When you said that, I was like, yeah, mine's not so much the, like what is he thinking over there? It's more like, couples fight about finances, and they're thinking about, she's thinking about what she wants to spend money on and these long-term things, and I'm like, I don't know, I really want to spend a few more fab dollars on James Robinson. Like,
yeah,
it's like, I just, I'm not worried about the long term. I'm not worried about kids right now. Like, we're not there yet. We'll figure everything out with the wedding, but let's figure out James Robinson.
Yeah.
Well, that's the secret is once you have kids, you also still don't worry about the kids. Like, you only worry about the kids for the first one that you have for like the first 2 months when you think everything's going to break them. And then afterwards you're like, oh man, they're like steel ingots over here. You can't damage these things. They're crazy.
Once you start feeding them, they just won't go away. So
we went up north last week on Saturday, and we were packing the car, and my son, the whole entire time packing the car, was like panicking, like, oh God, they're leaving without me. And he's 3.5. My wife and I are outside packing the car, all of a sudden all we hear is a thud. I'm like, what the? And my son starts crying. He fell down the steps. You know what? 5 minutes later, he acted like nothing happened. I'm like, dude, you just fell down the steps. It's like that drunk friend you had that did something stupid. You're like, dude, you got hit by a car. He's like, what? No, that didn't happen. Hold on, I'm going to switch out headphones.
Man, they're so resilient.
Word. Hey, look what I found.
What did you find?
Oh God, that is awful.
Nice. So that clip comes from our original beer show. You Can't Brew That on Television. And I had made a beer, and I decided I was going to, take a little bit of it because it was too much for my single fermenter. So I swapped it out and put some fruit on about a gallon of it. But basically, either something was up with the fruit or something happened, but it got what amounts to a pretty normal organic infection, and it had like this real weird off flavor. But sometimes that can be amazing, sometimes it can be terrible. Well, we had just decided to open it that night on one of our shows, and it turns out it was terrible. And then our buddy Matt Robinson swung by like right after the show was done. Hey guys, what's going on? Oh, nothing much, Matt. Here, try this. And he was like, what why am I supposed to try this? Well, why are you putting a mic in my face? Well, it's just really awful, try it. And then he took a drink, and
God, that is awful.
very organic.
Sorry, I missed that one. I was remote for that broadcast. Think you could drink the awful beer.
Well, we've talked about it before, but when Richard and I were first podcasting together, it was like over a decade ago, and Richard had this idea that like we could do this stuff live and create a chat environment, and people could talk and join things that you see on an everyday basis now, like open bar. Like that's kind of the concept of it. And now got a whole technology chain that allows it to happen. Richard basically invented that before, and
I invented it, but I was definitely an early adopter.
Well,
The audience was watching on a TI-84 or something. I don't know.
we had to use like some specialty chat software overlaid on top of what we were working on and send that out separate of the video link, and like nothing was integrated, and all the technology was difficult to adapt to your computer. So it was we spent a long time just sitting and doing what we're doing right now, which is getting ready for the show to start. And then it was like every show was a celebration. Like, yes, we got the technology done. Let's go.
Shack, thank you, Best Buy. Thank you.
That's funny because Open Bar was started. I'm the one that started Open Bar, and it was an idea of mine at Dynasty Nerds, and I was working with somebody on it, and I said we should get the writers together and just have a podcast themselves, like a video podcast, to where people can interact, because it's tough to get, back then it was tough to get a hold of Rich and Matt, and people couldn't ask them questions right away. And so I'm like, why don't we get these bigger writers for nerds and have them be able to answer the questions in a video format, kind of like a round table type thing. And then once I left Nerds, I took that idea with me, and yeah, found Gabe and J Mike. J Mike was on his show, and I said, you know what, you two should do podcasts.
Yeah.
That was that.
The rest is history.
And they're great voices, man.
Yeah. We're gonna get J Mike on our podcast before Tim came back, when John, but I just didn't want to take him away from Open Bar because he was busy back then too. So yeah, they both are really good.
Well, and all the amazing stuff that, everybody's got their little side talents, and, somebody like Gabe being able to do all those songs. I mean, they're so creative, man. They're awesome. And like, I find myself, Rich has been, he's so good at producing these shows and making sure they're clean intros and all these different things. And, and ours is generally kind of short, and we get right into it. I find some of these podcasts, there's like a 2-minute song on the beginning of them, and I love it. And, it took me a while to figure it out that it was all Gabe. Like, he did like all of them. I'm like, oh, wait, this guy's amazing. Like, how did he do all of these? And, so I end up listening to the songs every time I listen to one of those podcasts. It's great.
Yeah. My favorite of his has to be Dynasty Trade Calculator. I love that intro because it ties in with Izzy and being Egyptian. I love it.
Man, I like Eton and Stompies. That one. Yeah,
the Dynasty Diagnostic. Yeah.
Pop the Hood. That one's phenomenal. And the Devi Happy Hour. That one's really good too.
Yeah, we have one for Dynasty Happy Hour. We only use it when Robbie comes on.
Yeah.
Because Mike Wright made our main intro, and it kind of gives all the info to it. So we're like, we kind of have to stick with that because it gives Twitter handles and all that fun stuff. So,
well, it's pretty cool, man. So I'll just give you the quick rundown on our show format. What we're going to do today, we'll just do our standard intro, and then Jeremy will introduce you, and we'll ask you a few little normal standard stuff, and then we're going to get into our show. And basically, what our show is kind of centered around Jeremy's articles. So we've got an upcoming article that Jeremy's working on that is about fantasy holdouts, the psychology behind an NFL holdout. So that's what we're going to kind of premiere there. We'll do that. There's I believe Jeremy's got us ready to go for another little game that we do.
2 games.
Oh, we got 2. Nice. So
I think, did we do 2 last time too? So I was just going to bookend it with you in the middle with Hot Cushion. Is that okay?
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah.
So we'll just do it like last time with, we'll do all that intro stuff and talk to Tyler a little bit. And then I'll go bias game, and then we'll go Hot Cushion, and then I'll go this other game I created for Tyler.
That sounds great.
Just for me? Oh,
just for you.
I'm on a stretch of creating games just for people.
Oh God.
They're psychologically related, so.
Well, the bias
So
game.
it's like, so for me, it's gonna be like, what's your favorite color? What kind of crayon do you go for first? Like,
At the
I mean,
at the reading
yeah.
level of our guest.
Right.
exactly. There you go. Yeah. I mean,
Say, what is your favorite flavor of crayon?
well, if I would have to say, it'd be green because my imagination goes to green apples. So
Delicious.
Nope. So okay, well, let's just roll into it then, and we'll do our normal thing. I think this is going to be fun. Tyler, we really enjoy a lot of the stuff that you put out, so I knew you'd hit the mold right with what we do here.
well,
So this will be
I
fun.
put out a lot. So
Hey.
Tyler, it's Gunther.
Gunther, yeah, nailed it. You're probably like one of the only few that have actually hit that.
All right. Well, now I'll probably blow it on air, but
Yeah, probably.
Well, no, we got it recorded. We can just edit that in.
Yeah, it'll just sound different tones.
Yes,
Gunther.
Herman.
I usually just say it 3 times in a row and then let Rich fix it later.
Yeah, thanks for that.
The problem is, it's like Bloody Mary. You say it 3 times in a row, a ginger comes up behind you and haunts you.
Alrighty, I'm
So we are tweeted and streaming and recording, and I have no reason to delay you guys anymore. Whenever you're ready.
fantastic. Well, welcome to Dynasty Self Help, a podcast helping you self-actualize in the hobby of Dynasty Fantasy Football, a show where we teach you to operate within your mind, even though you might be without. I'm Kyle LaPointe, downloading my thoughts to you from Fort Worth, Texas, and joining us from State College, Pennsylvania is my co-host, Jeremy Schwob. How are you now?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, Kyle.
That's fantastic. Today we are going to tell you what we're going to tell you with a bit of early thoughts on the psychology of NFL player holdouts. Jeremy?
Yeah, it's a interesting topic that I'm digging a little bit more into that I'm excited to talk with you fellows about. I found that we tend to, during the off season, make a lot about nothing. And, this may be one of those cases where we're kind of creating something psychologically that's kind of a personal battle within ourselves. But before we get too deep into that topic, I want to tell the listeners who's joining us. So
There's somebody else on my couch. Who is this?
there is. Yes, you guys are awful close to each other, I must say. But we're pretty pumped to be joined by Tyler Gunther of Dynasty Happy Hour. You've done lots of other things, but Tyler, welcome. We're just absolutely overjoyed to have you.
Yeah, don't sound too excited, Jeremy. I mean, I'm over here getting molested by Kyle on his couch, and you're sitting there just allowing it to happen. I'm sitting here begging
professional.
I'm just begging Jeremy this whole time. It's been like 30 minutes. I've been trying to give signals to Jeremy saying, help me, send help. Kyle's got me, trapped on his couch. It's leather. It's warm in here. It's gross. It's humid. And he's breathing very heavily. So I am nervous.
I should clean that thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking those headsets off so that I can feel your ears rather than those big fuzzy mitts that were on there before. This is just an amazing moment for me.
Yeah,
He's an ear rubber.
He is. Kyle puts a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on that couch over there in terms of our topics.
And they're not his.
No,
That's why I'm here for help.
that's right. That's why he shows up every week per mandate from his official proceedings. So why don't I just kind of give a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about today. So we are going to talk about player holdouts and maybe some of the psychology underlying it and just, what goes on for us as dynasty owners. We will jump into a couple games, a couple that are becoming kind of staples here on the Dynasty Self Help Podcast. And Kyle, you'll slide down your sticky couch and you'll do your best to slide down it, I should say, and let Tyler take on that hot cushion that you've warmed up for him. And then, we'll banter around and wrap it up and call it a show. That sound good to everybody?
I like it.
Great. Let's go.
So before we jump into the topic, Tyler, tell us a little bit more about Dynasty Happy Hour. Tell us where we can find your stuff, what your Twitter handle is, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Dynasty Happy Hour is a site and podcast I started over 5 years ago. It's been a journey. It's been awesome. It's been fun. Started off as a hobby. Now it's just like a weekly fun time to go talk with my co-host. Probably what you guys got going on here. Just kind of a getaway from the family, the kids, and time to just talk football. I mean, my work people are sick and tired of me talking about football. So I had to find two other people to get sick of me talking football, and that is Tim and Doug. But yeah, you can find me at DHH_Tyler. And yeah, just ask me anything you want. Football related, nothing with this couch.
Well, you just have to, treat yourself with kit gloves on the couch because, we can only clean it once a week. We don't quite have the, the dollar capital coming in, so where we can sanitize it. COVID's an issue, so just be fair warned there. So.
Yeah, and
I mean, you're not asking me to wear a mask, which is rude. But you did ask me for. I'm not gonna say it. We'll just move on.
What's great? I don't have to be the only one derailing all our topics. This is amazing.
We'll do it itself. All right, Tyler, what's your Twitter handle? We'll do that at the end as well, but just so people can kind of look you up during the show.
Yeah, DHH_Tyler, and then you can find the podcast Dynasty HH Pod. And we have, we go live like you guys do on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube and Periscope. Also, you can give us a follow on Periscope. We go live every Sunday. And yeah, we got the Debbie Happy Hour and the DHH Contractor done by Memphis.
I will be facing off against Memphis in the Scott Fish Bowl this year. So he is in my G.I. Joe division.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Memphis is one of the good ones.
He's cool. He's got quite the arcane knowledge of G.I. Joes, which I appreciate.
Yeah, he seems like one of those guys. The ones that have a full basement of G.I. Joes and camo covering the walls.
Yeah, better than what could be covering the walls in this therapy session. So... Jeremy, can you explain a little bit more about the psychology of a holdout? Like, are we going to be talking about like the actual professionals, or are we going to be talking about how it impacts us? Like, because I don't know if you guys know this, but in high school, I played fantasy football. So I was a tight end for my high school fantasy football team. And, so that gives me a lot of insight and knowledge into fantasy football that a lot of people don't have. So in this particular case, I'm just wondering, are we talking about the actual football players or the actual fantasy football players like me?
Yeah, I mean, I think with any of these topics, both are involved. But I think that the unexplored aspect of it is how it impacts us. Similarly to our conversation a couple episodes ago on injuries with Dr. Edwin Porras, there's the information that we have, there's the information that we don't have and we'll never know what's going on behind the scenes. And then there's all the information that's kind of spewing out from us and likely hindering us as dynasty owners. And, that latter aspect, I think, is what we want to focus the most on because it's probably the most unexplored. And I think that this is an interesting topic, not only for the off season, but with Tyler being a Vikings fan, Skol, with the Dalvin Cook kind of quote unquote news, I'll say this off season, it might be valuable to talk about this concept, I guess. And so let's talk about Dalvin Cook specifically. When you first heard the kind of breaking news, Tyler, that Dalvin Cook was, potentially planning on holding out for a new contract, what was your reaction?
Good for him. I mean, he's uber talented. his issue is injuries. And if he has another injury, he's looking, instead of 12 to 13 million a year, he's probably going to get 8 if he gets injured again. I mean, he's probably one of the more talented running backs in the league. And yeah, the only issue is injuries. And I mean, if the best ability is availability in the NFL, and especially with Mike Zimmer, who's an old school coach who needs you on the field, and the fact that they have Alexander Madison, who, yes, was injured himself and a little unproven, is a very young, very talented running back in himself. So he had an opportunity to do this, because unlike Zeke, where he had more years on his contract, Delvin is a free agent next year. So he's doing it at the right time. It's just if the Vikings will pay up. And if it was me guessing and putting money on it, I would say the Vikings are going to give him 10 to 12, depending on the contract situation and where the numbers lie. I know they don't have enough to give him 12 right now, but say they give him his base salary right now, and then say we'll pay you 13 next year, and then 13 the next, but then the following year it's 6 or so.
As the therapist about what you responded with. One is you didn't go straight to your own teams, in terms of your own dynasty teams. That likely is because you're a fan and you maybe have more of a personal connection to the player that's, on your NFL team. And then you also kind of, laid out this contract structure that may be dictating some of the way that your expectations lie, and not lie in terms of a bad thing, just where they're at currently, and what that expectation might do for you in terms of your decisions in dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much spot on, because in dynasty, if a running back hits around 24, 25 years old, you're looking to get out. I mean, that is my new strategy, especially even with the likes of Christian McCaffrey. I know he got a huge contract and I know he's safe, but man, we at Dynasty Happy Hour, a lot of us are like, okay, if you have a one-on-one player like Christian McCaffrey, why not get extreme value and like say get a player like Joe Mixon, where his value could even boost up some more, or a younger player like DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor or Clyde Edwards-Helaire plus, and keep adding on to your team. Why not do that? I mean, if you want to build a juggernaut dynasty, I get you have the best player in fantasy football, but there is an opportunity for you to gang more assets that can actually go up themselves. So instead of one extreme asset, you have 3 rising assets on your team. And with running backs like Dalvin Cook at 24, 25 years old, you're looking at an asset that is at a running back hitting peak. Like 26 is about where I start getting really nervous about running backs and what I'm going to do with them. I mean, if you're on a contender, sure, keep them. Why not? You're in it to win it. But if you're looking to gang value based off an asset, why not get out at that age? So if Dalvin Cook got a contract, that actually boosts his value in order for you to trade him. Right now, his value isn't going to get you anything. But say he signs a 3-4 year deal, I mean, that gives you a huge window to go sell him to an owner that looks at him like, oh, he's safe. But is it technically safe? Because running back contracts usually are 2-year deals, kind of a hidden 2-year deal. So yeah, it's the running backs make me nervous, and that's why I like the idea of refreshing every 3 years.
Yeah, and that aligns with a lot of what I like to do, really, with any kind of top asset. I like to kind of break them apart for more shots, not because I'm playing the value game, because I'm pretty vehemently against that. Not that I ignore it by any means, but I see it as all perceived value. Like, I don't think that there is value. It's all, whether it's group perception that all combines together and becomes value. It's still, perceptions at this moment. And, once Dalvin Cook, holds out, then everybody's down on him, and then his value drops, and then he signs the next day, and then everybody's back up. And it's not like his value changed as a player, as an asset. It's just what people are reacting to, and kind of decision makers in drafts and things like that. But I do it more because because everyone else does care about the value of it, that, okay, well, I'll sell him for other pieces that I like, not just to get, value. And then I'll buy him back in 2 years when everyone is super down on him, and yet he's still producing, and I'm buying you could call it like a dying asset, like kind of where, you're buying like Gurley and Bell and Gurley, Bell, DJ, Connor, all those guys are, they've passed, they're not going up anymore, essentially. And so those are the guys that I like to, get rid of before all that happens, then pick them back up later. It's not like I'm, I'm not trying to completely avoid them the rest of their careers if I can get them for an early second or something like that on a contender. And so, I'm not playing the value game necessarily, but it looks the same as someone like you playing the value game.
Yeah, no, and I like that. Like Gurley has been a huge buy for me this offseason. I mean, if you don't think the Falcons are going to give him 250 touches this year, you're absolutely mad. I mean, who else are going to throw in Ito Smith, who I'm actually a bigger Falcons fan than I am a Vikings fan. So Ito Smith is not good. Brian Hill is okay, but they don't trust him. And then who else do they have? Quadra Allison, who's like 500 pounds, a TJ Duckett lookalike type player. Yeah, no, thank you. Gurley's going to get the ball. He's going to be the workhorse, and he'll probably get another 2-year deal somewhere else. Atlanta, I could see them kind of letting him walk, unless he comes back for a similar $8 million deal for 2 years. That's the way Gurley's going to live. And yeah, I agree. Say you traded Gurley when he was 101. You got a ton for him. Now I'm seeing trades, a 2020 second, a 2022 first I gave for Gurley on a contender, and I would do that all day. I mean, you're looking at what, 2 years out until that pick means anything? And I know that asset in the draft pick is going to keep going up. It's not going to lose value, but Gurley's going to help me now. I mean, who knows where we're going to be at in 2022? There's a good chance, Satan himself destroys the world the way 2020 has been going. So, yeah, who knows in what's going to happen in 2022? And that's the best part about being in the industry is I've worked with people like Rich Dotson from Dynasty Nerds. I have written for the fantasy footballers. I have absorbed their information and their strategies. And like John Bosch, like you guys had on before, he's the ultimate value king. I learned so much on player value and evaluation from John Bosch. And having combined those strategies has helped me so much. Like Rich is 3-year running back window and then sell. That's where I'm getting that from. The Hitman and Jason Moore. I mean, don't look at your rookies as assets that are going to help you. Build on a 2 to 3 year window and you will always recover. Like, you don't need to worry about 3 years from now because you will recover once those older players go. Like Julio Jones has been a declining asset for 25 years now.
Right.
And he's still producing. And we can't look past these older players. Like DeAndre Hopkins is going to start turning into that declining asset. He's already starting to decline after he went to a better situation. Like, that is dynasty minds at the fullest. Like, we overthink things. Like we talked about before the podcast, I sit there and I overthink trades. I overthink everything. But that's what dynasty minds are. That's what makes us so unique, is because we overthink things, we overanalyze, but overanalyzing for our own players we love. And that's what makes it great. That's what makes dynasty awesome. Hell, I have DeAndre Swift over Jonathan Taylor. People bash me all the time. And you want to know why? Because I love DeAndre Swift's game, and it just fits so perfectly in the NFL. I don't care what team he landed on. That guy is like a Cinderella slipper on the NFL today. Like, he fits so well that I think no matter what, he's going to produce. And Jonathan Taylor needs to catch passes, otherwise he's Nick Chubb. So that's where I am with players, and that's what makes Dynasty awesome. Is we can all be right, but yet be wrong.
Right, but I was going to say, but Tyler, you're wrong on your Swift over Jonathan Taylor take because value, right?
Yes, and honestly, value.
Sarcasm, but
It's true though. It's actually true. Like I could get Swift plus probably a 2022nd for Jonathan Taylor if I wanted, because people perceive the Lions as a bad landing spot and they perceive the Colts as a good one. The Colts have a great offensive line, but let's not forget Marlon Mack is a very good running back, and he's going to split carries. Kerryon Johnson, last I heard, got injured sneezing in the shower. That didn't happen, but man, like
slippery in
He
there.
wasn't
Though.
sneezing.
we can't look at that situation because DeAndre Swift has a unique skill set compared to Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is a damn good running back. DeAndre Swift can catch the ball very well in the backfield. Alvin Kamara-esque is what I'd like to say with Swift. And if he plays any type of role like Alvin Kamara, those catches in PPR leagues are worth more than the carry Jonathan Taylor is going to get, unless Taylor takes it 85 yards and a touchdown.
Sure, but after 3 weeks in the season, if JT's averaging 8 carries for 50 or 60 yards, and Swift is getting 20 carries and a handful of catches a game, then that September, October ADP is going to have Swift over him. And
Yep.
that's fine to, like, you don't have to take lock everything. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But, like, right now, people would call you wrong for having that take.
Yeah.
And nobody knows, and that's the point. And so there's no right and wrong. It's the masses feel that, the masses like Jonathan Taylor better. So he is then more valuable.
Yep. Definitely than Swift. I mean, I think that if you hadn't had somebody like Clyde Edwards-Helaire come up into the mix and get drafted where he got drafted, I think Swift would still be one of those pieces people were going for. But I think that kind of muddied the waters a little bit more. There were already 5 that people thought were great and some others that they thought were close to that 5. So when you have that situation where you muddy the water and now it's like, okay, well, really what CEH did was he took away from Swift. He didn't take away from Jonathan Taylor. I think if you had swapped those players and put Swift over there in Kansas City, then you probably would have Swift going number 1 well above Jonathan Taylor, where it's only Clyde Edwards-Helaire going slightly about the same time. Some people prefer him to Jonathan Taylor, some people don't, but they're kind of neck and neck, and then that leaves the other 3. So it's interesting that landing spot, as much as we talk about it prior to, hey, talent is talent, guys, give talent a shot. Well, when we actually see people land, we totally change our tune. And I think that's it. It's so much fun. I love it. I love that the mind can impact our game so much. I'm liking this scenario with Jonathan Taylor to Melvin Gordon, another Wisconsin running back. But when he got into the league, he just didn't have a very good year. His first year wasn't very good. And it was questioned whether or not, it was very David Montgomery-esque the second year. Question of whether this guy would even be impactful. I don't know. Did this really
carry?
Yeah, did this, he's only getting like 3.2 yards per carry. Is he any good? He's never had to catch the ball. And then all of a sudden it's like they're dumping the ball to him 60 times a game. He's impactful on every front. He scores 12 touchdowns and boom, he's the darling. And going after him in a dynasty season the next year, you had to pay up for him. So some of these takes like Swift, if you have that ability to see a player and not be fazed by their landing spot and so on and so forth, sometimes you can quote unquote get value because your favorite guy isn't number 1. So it's not that you have to put him number 1 in your list and take him before those other guys, but you might be able to get both of them because he falls far enough back.
Yeah, you can meet somewhere in the middle of where you want it, where you would have him ranked and where you're supposed to take him based on ADP or other people's rankings. I have Akers as my rookie RB3 and Bryan Edwards as my rookie wide receiver 3. And I don't have any Bryan Edwards just because I haven't necessarily.
Well, you do. We got him in our
co-owned Bryan Edwards. Correction.
The Channels League.
That's right.
All because I made you wait 2 rounds beyond where you were comfortable, and we got it still.
Because you made me not get my other wide receivers, but
We have
but that's
10.
fine. But that's fine.
24
But yeah,
man
you
roster.
don't have to, if you're religious to ADP and what other people say, then you work against, whatever your process is. And, while I'm agreeing that Tyler should do what he does, I still I would prefer Jonathan Taylor. And that doesn't mean that Tyler's wrong or I'm wrong.
Just means you're wrong. Yeah.
Right. But really, it just means that so many people are too influenced by what other people are doing and saying, and you can have your take, and it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to then correct. What's not okay is to consistently be wrong and continue to lose and not be willing to reflect and be honest with yourself about why that's not working for you.
Yeah, it's all about learning from mistakes too. I mean, like you said, you have Akers at your running back 3. I love Cam Akers, and he has become an extreme value. Some people are even talking, okay, Keyshawn Vaughn over Cam Akers, and that was happening 2 months ago, and I lost my mind. Like, I was just like, oh, come on. Like, now we're really overthinking this. We're talking about the RB1 coming out of high school, and he wasn't even a running back. He was a quarterback, and he was learning the position at running back for 3 years as Florida State was going through just the meat grinder. Like, they lost their head coach and they lost a bunch of recruits. Their offensive line kept getting worse and worse to the point where they were just putting pegs up for offensive line. Like, it was so bad. You could go and watch tape in Florida State and say, well, it wasn't all the line's fault. I would hesitate like crazy too if I was getting rushed before I even had the ball. Like, there are reasons.
Put up that 7-man sled from Raiders Hard Knocks, the workout one, and that would be better than Florida State.
It would be, because they wouldn't get pancaked.
Yeah. It's Akers is an extreme talent. He had to do everything himself, and people are like, well, look at the situation he's going to. The Rams. Okay, the Rams offensive line second half, once they got Austin Colbert from Cleveland, who was also a second-round pick, who was going to be a very good interior offensive lineman. He just didn't progress the way Cleveland wanted to. He started progressing, and that made a huge difference. That one player in the interior can make a big difference. And I mean, if he keeps progressing the way he started to, I mean, that's going to be huge for them. And Akers is going to get better and better and better.
He's interesting. So the only share I got of him this year, I traded away almost instantly. It was kind of an amazing situation. But, we talk about those kind of values and the times to trade. And when the times are there, the times are there. We talked about Gurley earlier. We both picked up Gurley in our Clash of the Channels draft and traded him away. So those two things both happened. If somebody is willing to give you more than you paid for them, very much like John Bosch said, if you can get that value instantly, if you can get an upgrade instantly from what you just did, then you might have to take it. More times than not, that's going to work out for you. If you just happen to love a guy and think it's the perfect situation for that particular player, then yeah, you want to hold that particular player. But if you're somebody like Bosch, who plays in so many leagues that you just forget the names and start assigning a number, this is number 4 and this is number 8, and it's a pretty clean way to play the game.
Yeah, and determining what that upgrade is for you is what's important, and that's going to be different for everyone. It could be value for you or John Bosch or someone else. For me, I'm not just going to go for somebody that somebody really wanted Gurley and now he's going to trade somebody that would have been taken around before or something like that, or the next pick and a second rounder or something like that, where you're like, oh great, I'm gaining value already. For me, it would be where it fits into my process. If it's something that, because I'm not building with top 5 round, unless it's a second round like Miles Sanders or something like that. I'm not looking to spend those top 5 round startup picks on guys that are going to go there, where Gurley might go a little bit later. It just depends on the draft, and that's the other thing with ADP. It's it's where they might go, where the general population might take this player. And so you just have to kind of figure out what it is that you're looking to get out of any potential deal. Is it to gain value? Is it to strengthen your core that you want to build around? Is it to kind of level up at a particular position? Just determining what that is kind of the first step.
Well, and I think that kind of factors into what we talked about before with our psychology of co-ownership, and that's a pretty intriguing concept. And I think I saw some Twitter activity today, and I would like to revisit this psychology of co-ownership topic a couple more times, and I know we will when you write your article. But that concept of understanding what you're actually looking for in a trade, and we had a few of those things where it's like, hey, we're talking about this. We want to kind of go after this guy. We want to kind of do this thing. And then you and I have had that discussion. The names don't matter as much as the situation. So we were able to take that and, you would come up with a trade or I would come up with a trade or whatever it would be. We could go off on our own and not really have to do that co-owner decision-making process because we'd talked about it prior to about the caveats and what we were looking for.
And bringing this back to kind of player holdouts, I mentioned that, much of the specifics of things are behind the scenes, and we certainly don't know what's going on in their negotiations unless those are leaked, and you don't know how accurate those are. We don't know what's going on with the game plan, with our Taylor and Swift conversation. Like, we don't know what the coaches are planning. They might be talking about 10 touches. They might be talking about 15 plus touches. We have no idea what that plan is. And so we concoct these expectations with projections. We, if it's a holdout, we're projecting some sort of contract and contract structure as Tyler was doing. And that's not wrong, but it's also it's coming from us. And that's important to realize and recognize. And, it's funny because a lot of players that are going through this kind of contract negotiation, they're often like, I'm just going to keep my head down, keep, working out, keep playing my game, let my agent handle that. And yet we don't do that. We don't just say, let's keep this player on my roster. Like, let's just keep my head down and stick with my process. We say, oh, who's the backup? Let's go pick them up. Let's go overpay for them, or let's trade this guy for whatever, just to get him off our roster. And, I think that roller coaster experience is really just driven by us, because the player is just kind of hanging there and just doing his thing and knows that it'll all work out.
So I had an interesting thing happen in a startup league I did last year. Guy had drafted Ezekiel Elliott, thought he had just a killer stud in that league. Holdout happened. He said, Ezekiel Elliott is up for sale. I had talked to him prior to. I had actually tried to look at Ezekiel Elliott. I forget the way
the offseason too, right?
Well, yeah, because it's a startup.
Because the holdout happened, but it got done in the offseason still.
Yeah, it got done like way late in the offseason, but yeah, it got done.
Still, yeah. The holdout didn't impact games.
So you're talking about though that the guy, we're doing this startup in what, April, and all of a sudden now here we've got this thing going on, and you've got the rookie draft. Everybody's team has really started to solidify, and now this guy comes out and says, well, Ezekiel Elliott, this guy that was untouchable prior to, he said he's up for sale. And I started talking to the guy because I had looked for him, but I wasn't willing to pay the price. And I was like, interesting. I wonder how much the price has dropped. And so I offered if this is the price I would have been willing to take Ezekiel Elliott happily in the draft, here's my price, I'll give you that. And he said, no, that's not enough. But the holdout made him somebody I am willing to trade. I wasn't willing to trade him when I picked him up. I'm now willing to trade him because of the holdout. So that was an intriguing concept, maybe something slightly different that, the guy still wanted value, but he was an untouchable value prior to. And now he is a value that you can get, but you have to pay equal ADP value, cost, whatever you want to call it, for said player. Whereas a different situation, as for what Tyler was mentioning earlier with here's a Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey is he's got an ADP, sure, but you're going to have to pay something ridiculous above that ADP to get him. And so he's saying, why not give him that sale price? The holdout in general in this particular situation made Ezekiel not be that guy, because he kind of was last year. Like he was looking like he's got another 2 years on his rookie deal and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden he holds out and boom, I'm willing to sell it. You know, it's intriguing just in the fact that it can make an untouchable player touchable.
Yeah. And I think that thinking about how we react as dynasty owners, I mentioned kind of rushing to pick up the backup or buy the backup or, you know, handcuff that player before any of this happens. I wonder, you know, I'll throw this to both of you about, you know, how viable you see that strategy, because we've seen that, you know, work out in some isolated cases, like maybe Bell and James Conner, and then Gordon and Eckler, though Eckler was kind of already involved, but not so much for like a Gurley and Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson and DJ and Chase Edmonds and, you know, things like that, where you're just stashing a guy that ends up playing for a week or two maybe, and you're holding out this hope that he's going to be the next big thing when the contract doesn't come. And, you know, it's not always that it works out that way. So what's your guys' feelings on that?
So what you're saying is the correlation between the backup and...
Well, just how that fits in terms of your dynasty kind of strategy. Do you play that game where, because for me personally, I don't really roster, especially like handcuffs. Like I don't handcuff my own running backs. I don't care about running backs anyway, but
Kyle handcuffs me, so
right. That's why
he had to leave for a second and clean himself up.
You unhooked him for a minute. But yeah, I don't really, you know, play by that. And I try not to get those running backs behind kind of workhorses that have literally no standalone value, that, you know, only are going to play if there's an injury or, you know, and I just, when there's a holdout that occurs or a contract negotiation or something like that, I just essentially kind of ignore that and just take it as noise and narrative. And, you know, if they move on from that player and he doesn't get the contract, it's not like they're going to be like, okay, well, we have to play this guy because Tyler's handcuffing him. It's, you know, no, we're going to go find some street free agent or we're going to draft somebody next year.
I mean, there's scenarios where you'd want to do that. Like Delvin Cook is a perfect scenario. Somebody who's been oft injured, and you'd like a player like Madison, even though, you know, you saw a player like Mike Boone come in for Madison when he got hurt. So it's never a for sure thing. But players like Anthony McFarland are nice to have, because say you got James Conner. James Conner has not been, you know, the picture of healthiness himself, or Jalen Samuels, who's just another guy. And McFarland is a special talent who can rise up the depth chart. So say you do have a James Conner, he would be a guy I would like to have. A guy like Tony Pollard with Zeke. Zeke hasn't been known to be the best citizen, let's just say. So Tony Pollard, he has shown on the field that he can do it. So a player like that is nice to have when you have Zeke. There's a couple other ones that you can have out there, but, you know, there's also standalone value guys like a Kareem Hunt with Nick Chubb. You could go ahead and say Tariq Cohen with the Bears. He's got some standalone value. And the interesting backfield to me has to be the Packers with Aaron Jones and them drafting A.J. Dillon while also having Jamal Williams. Like, they like Jamal Williams more than any of us like Jamal Williams, but they also like A.J. Dillon. How many carries is A.J. Dillon getting? Are they gonna lower Aaron Jones' value down to, I don't know, more of a third down back type guy and use A.J. Dillon in a power back role? We don't know because of the draft capital they used on A.J. Dillon. So there's some situations that are a little more questionable for me.
Certainly. And Kyle, before you jump in, I just want to follow up on those, in that it sounds like a lot of that, Tyler, for you is, for some of it, it's the guys that, could become injured or have some sort of injury history. Um, I think relating it to our holdout situation, I try and ignore all the contract talk in terms of using that directly against the player to then handcuff them. I think that it may be important for us to kind of zoom out from this holdout conversation, really just into kind of like a second contract running back talk, because that's, for me at least, what it kind of boils down to is I'm trying to not really, that's kind of the sell point for me is, when they're entering that second contract, then the team is like, okay, this guy is on my books for a lot. When is my get out point? As soon as there's any injury decline, an alternative option off the street, or someone we've drafted that we're high on, something like that, where it's I try and avoid a lot of the noise that's happening in the moment, and try and just zoom out and say, okay, what's going on here, big picture? Okay, well, this guy is probably not going to last, and if he does, he's an outlier because of his position.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that's going to happen, though, with the running back contracts is we've had a surplus of young running backs coming from college. Well, if you look at the landscape now, there isn't many. Like, there's maybe 4 in the next 2 years that are elite prospects to come out. So if you look at it in that way, maybe the NFL will see that, and the NFL will start signing running backs. Like a Nick Chubb will get his contract. Delvin Cook gets his contract. We saw McCaffrey get his. Barkley will get his because Barkley's a sensational talent, a generational talent, if you may. And there's just not going to be the surplus we've had the past 2 to 3 years of running backs and the talent that maybe they're going to start resigning these high-end players that we've grown accustomed to. And maybe we'll start seeing the years of when Adrian Peterson was running wild and he was getting these mega deals of 20 plus mil a year. And maybe we go back into that because, I mean, we're seeing a transition into the college NFL, or college to NFL, and more of a passing attack, but things will start switching back to the running game and more of a West Coast. Who knows how long that will take, but things are going to keep changing. We see Bill Belichick going back to the run game. Well, maybe he's on to something, and that comes to fruition 5 years from now, and then the run game is the main part of an offense, and it's more of a play action pass. So that I do think running backs will start getting paid more, going back to my point, because of the talent isn't as deep as it used to be. So I would like to say, hopefully running backs can sustain their value longer than this 2 to 3 years and then be gone, because that would be nice. That'd be nice if we had that again. If we had the wow, I've got this running back for 5 to 7 years. I would love that.
Or it might take that kind of dynasty strategy that we were taking on. NFL teams might, draft their running back for their rookie contract. Once they want their big contract, they let them walk. Once they get cut for, 2 years later when their performance starts to decline, or they get banged up, or the money is just too much, then the team goes back and says, all right, we want you back now when we can afford you. And that's
you might see that with Devonta Freeman here. I mean, we're literally talking about the Falcons. I mean, that could literally happen. Gurley could get hurt at the end of the year, and they just go, hey, you played for this team and you got cut, or whatever the situation may be. Maybe you're still on the street. Who knows? Like, the teams will go back to the guy, but the contracts will be small because it's a half a year or 3 games or 5 games. Marshawn Lynch came back to Seattle. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I would love to. I miss the days where we were comfortable with running backs. Like, running backs were the main thing. I know in a redraft right now, the running back is being taken. There's like 8 of them being taken before a receiver, if you go that route. But I want to see the influx of running backs again. I want to see the players like Adrian Peterson used to be when you owned him and you're like, yeah, I've got AP. I've got this dude as a keeper for like 8 years. I kind of miss that. Wide receivers are kind of taking this dynasty mold. And that's why I think Superflex is very nice to have, because if you have a stud quarterback like Mahomes, man, you can just put him in your back pocket for 10 years and feel comfortable. Like that's what I love about quarterbacks and Superflex.
Yeah, it's nice to have an asset that will last that long if it's the right one, right? If you have him, you can keep him for a long time, and he's going to have a sustained ADP style value, which is important in the game, because then you can move if you need to move, and you can downgrade and build up your team again if you need to reload. You can sell off a few top assets that way, but it's getting harder and harder. Like you said, I mean, right now, I watched people selling Dalvin Cook last year, and those that did for playoff runs. Like I watched a team in a league sell Dalvin Cook for basically 2 firsts and a small other, high upside late round player. That's a pretty good trade, for a late round. That's pretty good. But Dalvin Cook now, if you try to get that same value for him in that same league, maybe you get 1 first for him. Maybe they'll tack on a second or a third. Just the difference between that end of year and now, and it's amazing to me how that can happen with a running back, but it really doesn't happen with a quarterback. So,
I want to bring up something similar. Shane, who you guys are having on next week? Yep. Shane and I are in the UDPL, the Ultimate Dynasty Podcast League, and he was going for it all. And I was just about out of it. I knew my team wouldn't be able to compete. So I had Christian McCaffrey. And he's like, I'm going for it. I'm going for the championship, which he won. Nice. So one of our trades, this is why I do like no trade deadlines, because it was in the playoffs. I traded McCaffrey. He gave me Miles Sanders, AJ Brown, N'Keal Harry, and 103 to get Christian McCaffrey. You are not getting that out of season. There ain't no way you can go get McCaffrey for that. Like, if you can, good for you. But just because he was going for it and he knew he had to pay up, and the price will go up on players due to them making title runs. And then out of nowhere, he's like, okay, Godwin's hurt. I need Julio. So he gave me Godwin for Julio. I'm not getting that, out of season. Mm-mm. So, I mean, I love those trades for me for the future. I was out of it. And I mean, I got major buco value for those 2 players that helped him win a championship. Like, I mean, he banked out. He got first. He got the title. He got the trophy. So he got what he needed, and I got what I needed.
And that's what makes Dynasty so much more fun than redraft. I mean, it's so hard to trade in a redraft league. They're fun in their own right, but it is so hard. It's all about the waiver wire and these other various different things that you got to look at, hoping you can predict the second year, third year breakouts better than other people. But man, I tell you, I love that kind of a story right there. And that definitely tells me, hey, listen, everybody that's out there, what you just said, Tyler, is the perfect thing that you need to do in your leagues. If there is a trade deadline, get rid of it. Like, bring that up every year until your team or until your league gets rid of it.
Yeah, or just bring it up. Bring it
are so important.
Yeah. Just bring it up as kind of like, okay, who would like this rule to be changed? And if you're looking to get a rule changed in Dynasty, you need to come in with a good reason why. Because rule changes in Dynasty leagues shouldn't happen unless there's a very good reason why. So say you want no trade deadline, bring up what I said. Say, I want to get the most value for my players that hold extreme value to playoff teams. And if I'm on the playoffs, I want to rebuild my team and get the most bang for my buck. And that's the only way you can. Like, that's the highest value you're going to be able to get a player, is when somebody is in the playoff team, they're going for a championship, and you just hold it right above them and say, you can get it, but you need to add an early second, or you need to add this player from your taxi. which is a high-end rookie from last year, like a Justin Jefferson, say at the end of the year, be like, okay, I need this guy plus a first for, Mike Evans, and then we can make a deal.
So speaking of, I was a contender in a lot of leagues last year. Do you guys need any Mark Ingram? I've got a lot of Mark Ingram. I was Mark Ingram because I bought him all over the place for whatever I would have to pay for him. But hey, it kind of worked out. Got me through some tough playoff weeks. It was a good push.
Now, is there anything worse than going back to players and trading them in running backs? Is there any worse feeling than holding on to a player like a little longer than you should have? There's nothing worse. Like Todd Gurley, if you had him on your team and you kept him through this whole injury thing, you got to feel terrible. Like you've got to feel like you should have gotten out from under the rug.
That's an intriguing concept. And the other one is, okay, not wanting to trade the guy or maybe holding on to him a little bit too late. The other side of that is buying the guy who then holds out.
Yeah.
Right? Like that correlates to what we're talking about.
Buying Le'Veon Bell.
Last year, the guy who paid 2 different firsts and another ancillary piece to get Dalvin Cook. How good do you feel about that now? I have no first in 2020. I have no first in 2021. I'm missing out on potentially an Akers or somebody like that who could have slipped back in the draft. I know I'm missing that. I might be missing on one of the only 2, maybe 3 running backs of relevance next year. And
holding on to Melvin Gordon for too long. I approached a friend of mine and I said, dude, he had Le'Veon Bell and Melvin Gordon 2 years ago. I approached him. I said, you need to get rid of them. I said, you need to trade them right now. And he goes, no, man, I'm contending. I said, if you want true value for them, you need to trade them now because they are at their peak. And he didn't listen to me because we're in the same league. And I said, I get nothing from this. I'm helping you. I'm not trading for them. I'm helping you. And he didn't listen. And now he's stuck with 2 older players that are probably going to rot on his bench.
Well, unless you want to take seconds instead of firsts and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about this year. Maybe it pans out. Those 2 players could do okay.
Yeah.
But geez, you basically screwed the pooch for 2 years because you only had one of them for a half a year. The other one under Adam Gase basically counts as a half a year. So that's pretty much the way that whole thing works.
Yeah.
I will say though that if you're judging it by kind of the value game and that's your measuring point, you're going to be more susceptible to the kind of ups and downs of it where 3 months from now, if Bell has a string of really great games and he's getting 28 touches a game, whoever acquired that kind of rotting asset can still cash out and maybe get if Keyshawn Vaughn's splitting with Rojo or something like that, you can get Vaughn plus or something like that, or Akers is splitting with Darrell Henderson, which I don't necessarily expect, but there's still opportunity. We don't want to get too rooted in, okay, like I fucked up and I'm screwed now. There's value is so momentary related, so rooted in the moment, and we put our blinders on, but we'll allow ourselves to look back past at all of our misgivings, but we won't look 3 months in the future. Not that we have to be like, oh, okay, Bell's going to be fine. Like I'm always going to get through this. You want to be realistic about it, but there's still opportunity, especially in season, to sell kind of vets that are going to produce this year, especially, in leagues that Tyler's talking about where you can, there's not a trade deadline and somebody needs him if he's still, still hauling in the season.
I mean, yeah, and thing, right? If that guy that you're talking about, if he finally tanks this year, maybe he has had a contender, now he doesn't. Well, the time to sell Gordon and Le'Veon Bell might be the opposite of what you were mentioning earlier, the time to buy them, right? Just like you were able to sell Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, maybe you don't quite get that kind of a value for Bell, but you can probably get the equivalent of a top 12 running back price for him if you sell him at the right time.
I mean, let's be realistic. J.K. Dobbins probably won't get as many carries as we actually hope. Where he's going probably 103 right now. People are in love with J.K. Dobbins due to the situation, and I do think he's a good talent. He's a good running back. He doesn't do anything great in my eyes, but where is he going to be slated? At the end of the year, is he going to be behind Keyshawn Vaughn? Is he going to be a guy because Keyshawn Vaughn will get passing work? Is he a guy that's going to be like, oh, well, Keyshawn Vaughn's producing now, J.K. Dobbins is dropping. Is he going to be a guy that falls behind the value of Keyshawn Vaughn? Because, despite being Dynasty, we get caught up in the what have you done for me lately type role in Dynasty in season. So could Dobbins be a value, and maybe he could be a piece you could look at for Le'Veon Bell or Melvin Gordon 1-for-1 for Dobbins.
Well, and we look at all the contract situations. I have no idea what Mark Ingram's contract is, but I assume there's
done after next year.
Right. But so that's going to be everybody. Oh, okay, 2021. But how often do teams that like their running back, their veteran presence at running back, re-sign Mark Ingram for a 1-year, $5 million deal for next year or something like that? Like that could very well happen. And then it's like, there's going to be people that are like, oh, J.K. Dobbins 2022. Now we have to wait again. Or it's just like, oh, well, you should just kind of play the long game about what does this all mean? It means that right now, there's obviously going to be a lot of competition for J.K. Dobbins this year. There may be competition next year, whether or not Mark Ingram is there. They could draft another third rounder that could be good as well and be, excel in the passing game, or use Justice Hill or something like that. Like we can do our best to guess, but we shouldn't make right and wrong judgments about, what the move is and strictly base it on value, at least in my opinion.
Well, guys, I know we've kind of run long on one of our segments here, so I'm going to go ahead, though, and take advantage of this little timing, and I'm going to scoot on down to the other end of the couch. So, Tyler, you can take my place on the hot cushion. Today, I'm going to discuss your fantasy football footprint and follow that up with some questions. Please keep in mind that I'm going to be very direct, to the point, and brutally honest, and the questions are not necessarily going to be easy. Is that okay?
That is perfectly fine.
All right. Before we get into the meat of this potato, I would like to ask just a few things about you. Whereabouts do you live in this world?
I live in Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah, so I'm from Michigan originally, so you don't really carry a lot of the twang. I'll just say that right now. You got some of it. I can hear it every now and again, but you don't really carry the twang. I can get into it when I visit my relatives, but
I'm from more of the southern side of Minnesota.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually, if you give me a quick break, I will bring my little daughter to the podcast because she apparently does not want to sleep. So
guest appearance.
Do it. Bring it.
This has become a surprisingly family-oriented show. We had father-son last time. We had bringing the family in now.
Yep.
Monty came last time.
That's right. The dog family.
Okay, so do you want? So I have 2 games. Do you want me to do them back to back after this?
We're probably going to run super long if we do them both. Do you want to save your bias game for next week?
Yeah. I'll do the one I created for Tyler.
Yeah. And then that way we have that one since we ran long. We haven't gotten as much into the actual psychology of the holdout, but it's amazing how similar the holdout relates to the psychology of just an older running back in general.
Well, I think that's kind of the point, is that we think of it as this odd thing, this, distinct thing of a holdout, but it's really just, us zooming in on something that we should zoom out on.
Oh, she does not seem intrigued by all these lights and that microphone. Heck, Dad, what am I doing in here?
She also has Kyle's haircut, too.
Well, my daughter had my haircut till she was about 5 years old. I heard that. Oh, look, she's got your hair. Like, yeah, well, that's kind of, she doesn't have much hair. Yeah. Oh.
That face. Yeah. Adorable. She's warming up. She's warming up to showbiz. Just give her a minute.
That's usually how I start when I
get
on. I have a couple beers and I'm good to go.
Let's get her a couple drinks. Yeah. All right. So yeah, keep asking me some questions.
All right. Well, you do a podcast called Dynasty Happy Hour. If your show ran long to say, an hour and 10, What emotional state would the additional 10 minutes be?
Probably goofiness. Probably just back and forth. Probably Tim, Doug, and I just making fun of each other. We're on that line.
I like it. So happy becomes goofy. Well, that works.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, Dynasty Goofy Hour. Obviously, you've been playing fantasy football a long time. You've even been writing and doing other things for 5+ years, as you mentioned before. Do you find that your fandom of teams causes you to draft team players higher than their ADP?
I would say more along the lines of college. I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I would like to say that I've drafted more Notre Dame players than I should. They don't really pan out too much unless they're tight ends.
Right.
So
their tight end went to Pittsburgh this year, right?
Chase Claypool? It was Chase Claypool. Yeah, well, wide receiver tight end. But yeah, Cole Clement too. I like him, but
he's good.
But yeah, I would say more college. I mean, Julio Jones is probably one of my all-time favorite players, and I actually did not own too much of him in Dynasty, just for the aspect of I don't want to have that OCD type feel that I was at fault for it. I have a friend that won't own any Vikings, and he's a diehard Vikings fan. He could get Dalvin Cook on any team. He had the 101 in a draft, and he loves Dalvin Cook, and he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So it's situations like that I kind of feel, but I mean, I'll overpay for some Falcons. Like Matt Ryan, I'll value higher than most. I like having Todd Gurley on a team now. I've paid for him just because I want to root for him on Atlanta.
Right. Well, and I think you're smart for the Matt Ryan thing. That's just one of those guys like Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford. Like they're just two guys that people quintessentially rate lower than their scores. And when you have somebody who's a veteran, who has a secure contract, who scores more points than the 5 or 6 quarterbacks that get drafted before or get picked up in their leagues before him, then that's just a good buy. It is. And so, yeah, I like that, man. So I'm a beer guy.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite style of beer?
I would just say light beer, like a Blue Moon style, a Belgian ale. Yeah, I'm not too big into the thick IPAs. I'm not too big into the IPAs. They kind of give me a gut rot. I'm not gluten or anything, so I don't need to worry about that. But it just makes me feel like I'm tired and worn out.
Understandable. So you like the lighter beers. That's totally fine. The Belgian styles. We talked with John Bosch about Belgian styles here last time we talked with him, and they're phenomenal styles of beer. So Blue Moon, originally was created and then eventually purchased by Coors, who now makes Blue Moon. But it was a small microbrew Belgian wit style beer. Wonderful beer. But my final introduction question: what is your favorite thing about fantasy football waivers?
Waivers? It would probably be if you have Fab, that's the way to go. And if you have Fab, the best part about it is waking up and seeing if you got your guy, seeing if you bid enough, and if you didn't, seeing what friend you're going to go up to and slap across the face because they outbid you on a player. There's so many times that I got outbid on Philip Lindsay his rookie year that I was like, that's fine. No, it wasn't. It was not fine because he ended up being very good. And it was situations like that that made me think, maybe I should up my bids on these really good producing young players instead of being like, maybe they won't hit, maybe they won't. Just go for it.
No, I like that. We were talking again in our Shark Tank leagues. So I'm in Shark Tank 2. The entire league is basically a Fab bid. So all auctions, everything about it is.
No, thank you. I'm sorry. I wouldn't be able to do that. I would.
It is amazing for somebody like me who just is a student of psychology. It's like I just love it. I love watching people freak out one day and change the next. And I'll actually be putting out like a diary series on this, and hopefully Jeremy can help me like dissect where I was at in those particular moments, because I'll just sit down and be like, this happened and I can't believe this happened. And it's been very unique. I mean, it's an intense league.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like I said, auctions. I'm in the red list league right now. The auction for the third, and auctions stress me out. Like I used to like them until I started being in a league with John Bosch, who is like an auction expert. So many times when John Bosch is like, "Wow, I can't believe he's out there for this price," and I'm just like, "God, this guy." I'm gonna go.
I posted a message in a message board for one of Peter Gent's eliminators. So I'm in this, and I didn't know what I was getting into with Peter Gent's eliminators. I should have known it would have been somewhat like Shark Tank. There are 50 players we're drafting in this silly eliminator. So there will be 850 players chosen by the time these 17 teams have their drafts. 850 players. Like, we're going to be delving to the bottom of the barrel. So I asked the question in there. I was like, I've never done an auction before. Of course I have, but I've never done an auction before, but I'm looking at the rules, and it apparently seems that what you need to do is wait until that thing says 1 minute, and then you bid $1 more. Is that how it works? Like, oh yeah, that's exactly it. But usually you want to wait till 3 minutes in case you have a computer glitch. So, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah. No, that he's also in Capitalist Pigs 3, and that's a running thing, a running theme that happens in those leagues, is where it's like, oh, and okay, you're outbid. Yep.
All right. Well, now it's time for my hard-hitting analysis and drama-laden questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, question number 1.
The Vikings have had some promising moments in the past, as have the Falcons. The Vikings seem to want to either pass the ball or run the ball, but never both. Matt Ryan only leads the Falcons to be a dominant offense every other year, so it is a shoo-in that they will be great in 2020. But there is a problem in that both teams lost key offensive weapons in Austin Hooper and Stephon Diggs. What is the name of the team that the highly drafted ex-Viking receiver now plays for?
The Buffalo Bills.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's incorrect. Laquan Treadwell went to the Falcons.
That's not funny, man. I actually interviewed that man, and he was not happy with me.
Well, so he was the highly drafted one. Stephon Diggs was taken, I believe, in the 6th
round.
Fifth round. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So also
Laquan Treadwell is going to be even more mad that you just completely forgot about him.
Yeah, he was a guy. His second year, I asked him. I said, "Okay, what's the difference that you are doing between year 1 and year 2 to help you progress more as a player?" And he just looked at me, and he just like in disgust. I'm like, I feel like that's a fair question. I mean, you sucked. I mean, you
need
sucked.
to progress.
And then I walked over to Daniil Hunter's interview, and I peed my pants a little because he looked me in the eyes, and I thought I was going to die instantly, because that is a man. That is a man upon man. Like, I've never seen a man built like Daniil Hunter. Oofda.
All right. Well, you're 0 for 1, but it's okay. You were close. Question number 2.
In the world of Dynasty Fantasy Football, there are many ways to determine player value. I prefer to use stats and base my value on that. Jeremy doesn't believe in value, so he trusts in his belief in stuff. Stats and stuff are both commonly used metrics in the world of fantasy football. In St. Cloud, it is illegal to eat hamburgers on Sunday. But what is it illegal to do in Minnesota while sleeping?
Oh, God. Swear?
No, it is illegal to be naked. You cannot sleep naked in Minnesota.
Oh, well, I know some friends that might get arrested.
These obscure...
Are those friends you?
No. And, well, I should say yes, because Kyle then knows I can't sleep naked on this couch.
So it's fun. All the states have these little obscure laws. Like Texas, you can't carry wire cutters in your back pocket. Like, that's illegal. So from the
Carry them in your front pocket?
You can. Not in your back pocket.
Solution.
Well, but back in the day, they didn't have front pockets. It was only back pockets. So I think Levi pretty much alleviated the session. Or
Thanks a lot,
All
Brett Favre.
So, question number 3.
This year, there are some scary situations going on with veteran star running backs. There's a fear of fantasy stars like Cook or Kamara potentially holding out for more lucrative second contracts. We saw this occur last year with Melvin Gordon holding out for half of the year, and 2 years ago with Le'Veon Bell as he took off the entire season. There appears to be a trend of running backs holding out with time remaining on their rookie deals. It appears that Joe Mixon is the most likely running back to hold out this year, so who is the last tight end to hold out?
Tight end. Jimmy Graham.
That is incorrect because in 2014 he held out as a wide receiver. It was Mercedes Lewis who held out for 5 days in 2011. I'm going to go ahead and give you a half a point on that one because, you did get the team's version of a tight end, but he held out because he wanted wide receiver money.
Yeah, he didn't even find himself as a pass catcher or something like that.
Yeah.
These questions are exactly how my wife's asked questions. No, that's not it. No, because I said this. You got to hear me.
Well, I'm glad I can make it feel a bit like home.
I guess that your wife will not allow you to ignore 90% of what we're saying first.
I think that's the key to most of my questions. You have to know which 10% to listen to.
I probably pay more attention to these questions than I do what she asks.
All right, question number 4.
The Vikings have been a revolving door of retread and treadless quarterbacks during the 2000s. They hired an ex-rival Hall of Fame level quarterback who wasn't far from taking Minnesota to the Super Bowl. Next, they got stuck in a web of bad players that made me ponder why they felt they could live without their teddy bear. I don't know what in Sam Hill was the case for them not re-signing Keenum, but they ended up taking their cousins to the dance instead. Adrian Peterson was a superstar for many years with the Vikings. Can you name a running back from the University of Texas that has been better than AD in the past 30 years?
Ooh. Archie Griffin?
I think he would have been beyond 30 years.
Okay. I don't... Cedric Benson wasn't one of them, was it?
Well, he was within 30 years.
Yeah, but I don't think he's better than AD. I mean, if we're talking comparable to AD, we're talking LaDainian Tomlinson, who was also from Texas.
TCU,
so
though.
I'm going to go with that. Hey, I mean, that's a Texas school, the way your questions are going.
I'm going to give you full credit on this because the answer is no, you can't name anybody from the University of Texas that has been better than AD in the past 30 years because it's not possible. So Earl Campbell would be the only one I would say, and I intentionally put the limits outside of that range where Earl Campbell could be considered so that I wouldn't get into that kind of a debate. But
Tyler figured out this game and has just ignored his initial thoughts and just says, let me think how Kyle's twisted mind would think about this question.
I'm wicked smart, what the Boston people would say.
Oh, that's a smart guy.
That's a smart pack.
The greatest commercial that they've done in the Super Bowl in probably the last 3 or 4 years. They've been declining. They haven't been higher quality each and every year like they used to be. But that one just kind of peaked it, and I really like that commercial.
Yeah, so we have on the Debbie Happy Hour Brian Schuck, who has a thick Massachusetts accent, and he was on the Dynasty Rewind last night, and I made him say harbor. And I tell you what, there's nothing that can make your day better than a true Massachusetts accent saying harbor. The harbor.
It's the most wonderful thing. Just like when I go back to Michigan and we put our soda in a bag. It's so great when we go to the
what?
Our soda in a bag.
Okay, you got one of those things right. Saying soda.
Soda in a bag.
Actually, no, we call it pop. So never mind. You're just 0 for 2.
No, that's true. Michigan, they would call it pop, but they'll sometimes call it soda. But they're definitely not going to call it a Coke like we do in Texas.
Hot dish.
I would like a Coke.
Hot dish or casserole?
What the hell's a hot dish?
The
that
greatest
dish-
thing
is
known
that
to
the
man.
dish-
Excuse
the
me.
dish that the casserole's cooked in?
It's called hot dish. Tater tot hot dish.
Do you call a water fountain a bubbler, or is that just Wisconsin people?
A what?
What people from Wisconsin call a water fountain a bubbler, or like a drinking
No,
fountain.
we call it a water fountain because we're not crazy.
They're not crazy, but they
Wisconsin.
can't sleep naked.
There you go. That's the motto.
That's true.
All right. Thanks for your time. I appreciate your candid and truthful answers and my insightful and hard-hitting analysis. Let's get back to what we were talking about before. Maybe we'll wrap it up. Maybe you've got your specific game here.
I do. I've got a specific game that I created for Tyler. So I know that you are in SFBX and you're in the Connect 4 division.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little exercise that I call Reject 4.
Sounds like my younger years.
So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to read you sets of 5 players, and I'm going to have you reject 4 of them, leaving just 1. And so I'll run through the list once and then probably another time just so you kind of remember who all the options are. And then just as briefly as possible, tell me why you're rejecting these players. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So here is set 1 of 4 sets total. Set 1 includes Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross, N'Keal Harry, and Marquise Brown. So you got to reject 4 of Corey Davis, Mike Williams, John Ross, N'Keal Harry, Marquise Brown.
Reject the first 4 and give me Marquise Brown.
Okay. So quickly, why Corey Davis? Why is he out?
Because he's had his time. And unless he's Devontae Parker, I mean, yeah, he's what, 5th year, 4th year, I think. Yeah. I mean, that it's rare that if you don't hit so many years that you're going to actually hit. Devontae Parker broke the mold, so I'll pass.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams I actually like, and he would be second on my list. So he was a tough one. I do like Mike Williams. I think that he fits so well with Justin Herbert that once Herbert gets the starting quarterback gig, I think Mike Williams actually starts rising above Keenan Allen. But so he was a tough one.
Don't like
So
that
if the
response.
future quarterback for the Chargers was some sort of a sweet and frozen treat, what would his name be?
Share Barrett.
Justin Sherbert. Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Why not John Ross?
Injuries. Otherwise, I think he's a pretty good receiver. I mean, he was what, top 15 receiver the past three weeks of last year when he finally was healthy. So I think he
killed it.
He's a talented receiver. It's just health with him.
Yeah. All right. And N'Keal Harry.
Love the player, hate the situation.
Okay. I'm not even going to worry about why you picked Marquise Brown. It'll be a cliffhanger for our listeners. They can reach out to you on Twitter if they want to know why.
Yeah, you can actually talk to Jason Moore talking me into it. So if you want to hear any advice, Jason Moore is the one who talked me into it. Actually, he talked me into doing a Justin Jefferson, who's my favorite rookie receiver.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson for Marquise Brown, and I told him that I'm going to come after him if he doesn't pan out.
There you go. Okay, set number 2. Again, rejecting 4 of these. Ronald Jones, Sony Michel, Damian Harris, Matt Breida, Jordan Howard. Again, you're rejecting 4 of Ronald Jones, Sony Michel, Damian Harris, Matt Breida, Jordan Howard.
I'll reject all but Ronald Jones.
Okay. So tell me why you're rejecting Sony Michel.
The knees. I mean, his knees have got to be worse than Todd Gurley. If
Are they worse than Grant Hill's knees?
They could be, and I don't think Grant Hill had knees.
He's the bee's knees, as one of my buddies, Pat Roy, calls him.
I love Grant Hill. I mean, he's the classic basketball player. I was back when Penny Hardaway was my all-time favorite. So, yeah.
There you go. Okay, why not Damian Harris?
Team. I mean, is he going to get over 200 carries on the Patriots? Probably not.
Ask Kyle. I'll tell you now. All right,
If I say it's right, I'll be wrong.
why not Matt Breida?
The team, yeah, they may have given up a 5th rounder for him, but he doesn't show any long-term situation type productivity. And I think Jordan Howard is a better running back. And the reason why I didn't choose Jordan Howard is because he's going to split time with Breida. I mean, who knows what the timeshare is going to be? And Jordan Howard was his 38th NFL team. He somehow made an expansion team that's going to happen in like 4 years. I mean, Jordan Howard's been all over the place. Yet
moved quite a bit.
despite his
still in
productivity.
his early contract, I can't believe Jordan Howard has moved so much.
Yeah, and he's very productive.
All right, let's move on to set 3. So these are going to be combo positions. So we'll just say, rejecting them or accepting them at their current cost in like a super flex tight end premium league. All right, so set 3, rejecting 4 of Kirk Cousins, Alexander Mattison, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Irv Smith Jr.
Ooh, so you're telling me in a super flex.
Super flex
And
tight end premium.
I would probably hold Kirk Cousins.
Okay. So
And I'd reject the other ones.
Yep. Why are you rejecting Alexander Madison?
Just because I think he's a true handcuff. And he also has his injury problems. Love the player. I think he's a second contract type guy. He'll probably move on from the Vikings and get paid somewhere else when the Vikings pay Dalvin Cook, I think.
Adam Thielen, why are we rejecting?
Age, even though I do think his style of play will be able to create longevity for him, I just think based on value on a super flex league, I would choose otherwise.
Okay. Why not Justin Jefferson?
That's the hardest one. And the hardest thing is target share. What is his target share going to look like year one? And is there a possibility of buying lower after year one?
And then finally, why not Irv Smith?
Love Irv Smith so much. It's probably just use. And I think he's probably the lowest valued player in Superflex out of these.
Okay. All right, our final set of 4 in our reject 4 game. We are, again, combo positions, so we'll say current cost or where maybe you value them in a Superflex tight end premium league. Matt Ryan, Todd Gurley, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Hayden Hurst.
I'd probably go Julio as the keep.
Okay. So why not Matt Ryan?
I mean, I don't know because it's Julio Jones he's going up against.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about Todd Gurley.
We found a bias.
So tell me why not Todd Gurley?
I think he's one and done in Atlanta, and I think he's going to be the guy who's more of a journeyman throughout the NFL after this year.
And then not Calvin Ridley.
That one's tough because I do like Calvin Ridley, a player, but I think he's going to just be the guy who stays as like a 1,100 yard type player and 8 to 10 touchdowns a year. I don't think he'll ever reach the wide receiver 1 plateau that Julio Jones can still get to, but he's going to be a solid wide receiver 2 year in and year out. So I would say based off of points, I'm still going Julio.
All right, and then finally Hayden Hurst.
Just you don't know. I mean, he could be awesome, but I think I looked up his age the other day and it said he was 52 already.
Yeah, it's pretty close to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he is ultra talented, but man, he needs to stay healthy. And he's got the opportunity now. So it's pretty much based off health and catching the damn ball because he's had his case of drops.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for playing along with my Reject 4 game.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, you can also do this running back through with the player that you actually chose and providing your rationale for that. You did that in some cases. But, we wanted to run through this quickly. We hear your beautiful little daughter joining our podcast, and that's totally fine. But this can be a good quick exercise, especially with like similar guys at their similar position or draft capital or possible roles, or even guys on your favorite team, to hopefully identify some biases or kind of non-process based decisions and see how they might be impacting you.
Yeah, I really like that, Jeremy. I mean, I think that a lot of times we look at things where we're trying to decide between this one guy and this one guy, or we're trying to decide between other situations that are more dynamic. But when you say here's 5 guys and they're all the most relevant players in one particular situation, pick one, it really makes you hyper focus on what you, as a dynasty owner, really appreciate or don't appreciate, or reject or don't reject. Because I'm sure, like, one of the questions we were talking about earlier, you probably, Jeremy, would have answered Matt Breida.
Yes, I would have.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I think the way I designed it is to, a lot of our rationale, our quick rationale that we don't want to be biased, is to say like draft capital, or to say like their expected role this year, or if we are fine being biased, we'd be like, well, like, I see him about the same, but like I really like this guy because he plays on my favorite team. So I tried to like take sections of each of those where you couldn't use that as an excuse and try and come up with something else, just to see what comes to mind. And I think that that's a useful exercise for us and helps us kind of train ourselves to investigate these different areas by, maybe controlling for one of these aspects.
I think that's a phenomenal scientific approach to it, and that's why you're a good therapist and why you're good at psychology, is that you understand these kind of things and you can break something down. Like this was a great exercise because it allows us to really delve into the whys of what's going on. And we luckily happened to talk about like Julio Jones. That would have been a more intriguing concept to talk about in depth if we hadn't discussed Julio much earlier in the podcast. And that kind of a difference between, I didn't take Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, but I did take Kirk Cousins. The mindset would have said, if you transfer that to a different team, for sure I'm taking Matt Ryan, but it didn't really work out that way because it was Julio, and I personally have Julio higher. And I think that's really important that we all understand that in our games.
Well, and if you answered similarly or differently to Tyler's responses, let him know on Twitter.
Because you're right.
That's right. That is right. But Tyler, we've kept you over what we expected to, probably just because we were so wrapped up in that initial conversation about, value and really spawning out of holdouts. And so we really appreciate you taking the extra time. Can you remind our listeners where they can find your work?
Yeah, dynastyhappyhour.com. You can find rookie rankings, any type of rankings. I've got a crew over there that does phenomenal work. A lot of writers putting up great stuff. You can find me at DHH_Tyler. And you can find the podcast, Dynasty HH Pod, on Twitter. You can follow the podcast on YouTube. Just search for it, or Periscope. And we go live every Sunday at 9 Eastern Time, 8 Central Time. Every Sunday we're live.
That's amazing. I've been listening to your show for quite some time, and I love it. Like I said, I listen to Dynasty Happy Hour as well, and I've loved that one, and the quality and consistent content you guys put out, it's just wonderful. And I really implore everyone to look into it if they don't already, which I'm sure they do. But if they don't, please, please, please go follow, sign up, subscribe, and make sure you listen.
Thank you.
That's right. And definitely let Tyler know what you think about his responses and what your responses would have been. We're Dynasty Self Help. Follow us at Dynasty Self Help. Our producer, Rich, is at Streaming Rich. Kyle is at Dogleg Brewer. I'm at Jared Schwob. And we will see you next time. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Thank you very much, everybody.
That was fun.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks guys for having me. That was fun. I would have